Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Quirked with the Lichess4545. We bring you the fourth game of the Season 11 game reviews. This one's a little bit late. I had something special in plan, but my video editing is just so terrible that this is actually going to be a re-record. My idea just wasn't working out. I'm very sorry for the delay. I know we're a little bit into the next season, but we still got some games to get through, so now's the time. There's no time like the present. So today's game features Scarff, rated 1772 on the white side, versus GeneralSpecific, rated 1828. And this was a really interesting game. Sort of some shenanigans happening out of the opening that we'll see what I'm talking about. So Sicilian on board. And here, of course, the main move is to go d4, playing the open. But white instead plays c3, going for a delayed Alapin. And here, black plays very naturally. White is signaling he'd like to build up a strong center, so black says, no, I'm going to get there first. And this is very normal, just playing in the center. If white takes, ooh, my arrows are off. If white takes, he has a hard time putting pressure on this pawn because the most natural square for the queen's knight has been taken away. The knight would normally go to c3. So very standard move. And here I think white plays very unambitiously. Normal moves here are to take and play d4. This is a totally normal structure. Other things you can do, you can play e5 with the idea of going d4. I mean, that's just an equal position. But here we get a position where white just has no pull. White plays bishop b5 check. And the reason I call this very unambitious is this is basically forcing the light square bishops to come off the board. And we can see that the light square bishop is usually one of white's better pieces, and in this structure, black's light square bishop will be quite bad, especially if white ever plays e5. So after bishop d7, I mean, this is just a super duper equal position. After this, black gets easy development and should not be worse by any means, maybe even a smidgen better. Probably not, but it's possible. But instead of trading, white plays a very dubious move. White plays the move queen a4. And I call this dubious because we know that we don't want to be developing our queen early in the opening. We'd rather be developing our other minor pieces. And the reason is, oftentimes our opponent can gain time against our queen by attacking it and developing his minor pieces. So this queen a4 move is a poor move, and black responds correctly. Black simply takes e4. And now this is a strong pawn if you don't get rid of it. Of course, you can't take it right away. Your bishop's hanging. So you must trade. And then you can't really take here because then you're probably not going to get this pawn back. So you play queen takes e4. But now we see the problem with this. This queen has developed early, and it's going to be hit with development, like we mentioned, knight f6. Queen has to move again. Knight c6. And let's look at this position. So white has 2 developed pieces. Black has 3. So black has a lead in development, even though he did not have the first move. And black actually has better control over the center right now. This c-pawn is giving him very good control over the center. So black has more development and has paid nothing as a price. Normally, for black to get a lead in development, white either gains like a space advantage in the center or some structural advantage. But here there's no such thing. So black is just better because white brought his queen out he made 3 moves with his queen. And black also moved his queen, but he got to move it with tempo. He got to take the bishop on d7. So black has just played very logically, and this white's queen sortie has not worked out whatsoever. Castles, bishop d6, completing development, very good. And here white goes d4, which is somewhat necessary because these pieces need places to go. So here, white is proposing a change in the structure. And we know that whenever a structural change may or may not happen, or you have to decide what pawn structure you want to play, that's actually a critical moment in the game. So I'd like you to take a little bit of time here and ask yourself, would you play c takes d4 or not in black's shoes? So hopefully you took a moment to decide whether you think c takes d4 is a good move or not. I am of the opinion that c takes d4 is a very good move. And the reason is c takes d4 will force an isolated queen pawn position, which is both a weakness and a strength. It grants space, but it's also isolated. It can't be protected. And we know that in isolated queen pawn positions, black wants to trade pieces and control the d5 square, whereas white wants to develop quickly and get usually a kingside attack. So this is just a beautiful IQP position for black. The reason being, he has great control over d5. He's ahead in development by a tempo, so white's not going to have a blistering attack. This bishop is going to reroute and be well placed to deal with the isolated queen pawn. This queen is well placed. These rooks will swing in. So everything just makes a lot of sense for black. The other thing that's really good about this isolated queen pawn position for black is that the light square bishops have been traded, and usually white's light square bishop on d3 is one of his best attacking pieces in the isolated queen pawn position. Normally, the bishop goes to d3, queen e4, stuff like that, to create threats against the king side. So, all in all, c takes d4 is very, very logical and very strong here. After c takes d4, black castles, knight c3, and here, simply black goes bishop e7. We mentioned this maneuver. Black is preparing to go knight d5. Maybe put this knight on d5 as well, but they're both possible, and have a very good game. So this is just very strong. Instead, black chose to castle. Nothing wrong with this move. Black still has a very good position, but it does give white the option of playing d takes c5, and now white has avoided this structural deficiency, and white is better than he was in the previous variation. White is not better, but this is a better position for white than the position with the isolated queen pawn. Oh, I should mention, the other problem with the isolated queen pawn position is that white's bishop is a dark square bishop, and it's very hemmed in by the pawn on d4. So okay, d4, castles. If I were white, I would take c5, but white plays bishop g5, also a fine move. And now here, this gets a little bit interesting. White played rook a d8. Again, not some bad move. This accepts structural damage, but it's not clear that damaging the structure is actually in white's best interest. But again, this move was interesting, although it's much more complicated this time, because here white will not take back with cd4, allowing the terrible isolated queen pawn position, but white will throw in this move, bishop takes f6. So if you'd like, take a moment here, find the best move for black. Hopefully you took a moment. The best move is not to recapture. because this isolated queen pawn position is different. Black has structural damage as well. The best move here is to play d3 exclam. The point is, this pawn is not takeable. You lose the queen. So after d3, white has to move somewhere. I take your bishop. And here, black has an extra pawn, and it's no random pawn. It's a passed pawn on d3. Very strong. Notice that you are not directly rounding it up, because after rook d1, I have rook d8, and the same tactic applies. You cannot take d3. So this would be very, very strong for black. So again, after bishop g5, c takes d4 was an option. However, rook d8, not some terrible move. And as I mentioned, this structural damage is really nothing for white. White has no way to take advantage of the compromised kingside when he only has 2 pieces developed. How is he possibly in a position where he could attack the king? So that was a good evaluation from the black player. Instead, white played knight e5, which is reasonable. White's point is that you just can't take this piece. If you take it either way, this knight is pinned, and you're going to lose the exchange. For example, if you take the bishop, you have to move your knight on f6, but you will lose the exchange on d8. And this is not what black is aiming for. So after knight e5, black needs to move the queen. And there's nothing wrong. Let me try that again. There's nothing wrong with the very logical queen c7, which just puts more pressure on this knight. Now you are threatening to take the knight because you have a third attacker on this square. There's only 2 defenders. So white would likely have to go in for this. The knight has to drop back. And here, the pawn is hanging, so you simply play f5, and black has a pretty good position. Yeah, I mean, you could even play bishop e7 here. That should be fine for black. But instead of this, black played the very strange move queen e7. Not a good move whatsoever. And the reason is, we've walked into an unbreakable pin. Not a good idea. Not a good idea to put yourself in pins for no reasons. The pin against the rook was annoying, but now I'm pinned to 2 pieces, and it's a queen. I can give an exchange in some lines. I can't give a queen for bishop in any line, ever. So this is just a poor decision. We're pinning ourselves really for no reason. And white immediately says, I know what to do with pinned pieces. We pile up on the pinned piece. Let's go. Knight g4. And we see that this is awkward for black, because black has really no way of defending this knight. So black's only option here is to play for active counterplay. And which black did very well, actually. He played c takes d4. Part of the point of this move as well is that white may be threatening moves like queen f3, just putting even more pressure here, which means that black is going to need some space to guard this piece. So, for instance, if black plays some nothing move, queen f3 is an unpleasant reality here. This will probably force something terrible. I'm just going to take twice here. So the other thing that c d4 does is that now if white plays queen f3, I can actually guard the knight again with bishop e5. And I'm not falling apart here. In the other line, I was just totally falling apart. Here, I might be okay. In fact, I'm probably quite all right here. So this is another point behind the cd4 move, which is the best move in the position, given that black has put himself in this terrible pin. And this is an interesting position. White has quite a few options. So I think this is another critical position. I'd like you to take some time, decide what would you play for white. Here white has a variety of options. There's two obvious moves you need to consider, bishop f6 and knight f6. And there's another very, very interesting alternative, which is simply to attempt to put more pressure on the knight. And I can do that via the move knight d2. So let's go through these one at a time. The move played in the game, bishop f6, is a very poor move. We'll come back to this move because the game continuation will stem from bishop f6. Knight f6 is very tempting. And the reason is, after gf6, bishop h6 is actually a double threat. The double threat here is mate and the exchange. So black is forced to give the exchange here. If you try to save your exchange, you just get mated instantly, and the queen comes to g7, game over. So instead of that, black must stop the mate by playing f5. We take the exchange, and here, this is a very, very interesting position. The reason being is black is down the exchange, but black has a pawn to the good, and black has very, very active pieces. This bishop is on a well-placed diagonal. This rook controls a nice central file. The knight is controlling central squares, supporting black's center. And white actually has a big problem developing this knight. We'll see in a sample variation why this is so problematic. If white tries to develop the knight here, after queen h6, so now a mate threat is presented, you can go knight f3, but after knight f3, black has a couple. Let me try that again. Black has a couple options here. Black can take. Black can go d3 again with the d3 tactics. And black can even go e5. e5 looks like quite an interesting idea. Preparing to go e4 and with pressure here. So this feels a little shaky. If instead of knight f3 you go g3, I have tactics. Takes. Notice that this queen actually came to a very convenient location. I have bishop g3. And here, black is probably better. He's down the exchange, but he's won a second pawn. His rook will take up an active post on the second rank. I think black is doing very well. So these knight f6 positions, they're not so clear. White wins material, but he's still behind in development. Black has active pieces. This is the sort of position where I'd actually be happy to have black. I've become more appreciative of dynamics, and black's active pieces make me very, very happy, especially when you realize that this knight really struggles to develop itself. Another move you can try to play queen h5. The point behind this move is to stop the move queen h6. And here, black can go for a different idea, which is to play d3. So instead of playing to open the center, black is now saying, okay, you stop my sort of attacking ideas, but now I have positional compensation with a passed pawn on d3. Isn't that annoying for you? Maybe I go e5, e4, maybe my knight comes to e5. This is also a good square for a knight, even to g4. That would be a very strong square for my knight. And so black has a variety of ideas here. Probably not better with precise play. I think this queen h5 move is a good move, but definitely an interesting idea. The other thing that white can try that I mentioned was this move knight d2. And this move is very difficult for black to meet, because knight e4 is a monster threat. So you have to react to this threat of knight e4. And the way you react is not so easy. For instance, if you ignore it, knight e4, I mean, I'm literally just going to mate you. My bishop's going to end up on f6. I'm going to go queen g4, queen g7, just to show. I don't even know what you play as black. Okay, say you play like knight e5, trying to get your pieces over. Actually, knight e5 is interesting because you guard here. But I just go like knight f6. Yeah, this is a total disaster because I'm gonna have this move. So yeah, you can't do this. So after knight d2, there's only one move that black can play to even remain in the game, and again, it's this very pesky d3 move with the same tactical ideas. You still can't take this. But I actually have another point this time. My point is, if the queen leaves the e file, say queen d1, that looks like a sensible move. But if the queen leaves the e file, all of a sudden, my knight can go to e5, and I've disarmed your threats before the knight landed on e4, because I'm challenging this knight on g4. The knight on g4 is going to have to take. And this position should just be great for the black side. Again, bishop h6. Now g4 is covered, so you can probably even save your exchange. No problems here. So after d3, the queen should remain on the e file. But if you play to an active square, you're going to be hit by the good old bishop c5. Not exactly what you want here. I was just looking at bishop c5, something like queen f3. Yeah, this might not be as strong as I thought. But after queen e3, you can probably play something similar where you sack the pawn. Because after queen e1, basically you have to sack this pawn. Knight e4 is coming. You need to unpin. And after takes, check. Here, black has compensation for the pawn in that he's got a battery, he's got a pawn on d3. But white, in this variation, white has more realistic attacking chances. He's got a strong knight on f6. The king side is compromised. The queen knight actually made it into the game this time. So there's this idea of possibly going queen d2, queen g5. This is much less clear. Probably better for white, actually. I think the black king is very unsafe. I mean, yes, you can take this, but I'm not sure that's a pawn you want to be grabbing right now. So this was very playable for white. In the game, white played just a much worse option, which is bishop f6. And here, the issue is simply you don't win the exchange. Like when analyzing both captures, I wonder why the white player felt like the knight coming to h6 was stronger. Because here, white has no threat really. And I don't see the way forward. White plays f4, looking to take control of f5, perhaps with the move f5, but black simply stops that. And we see a problem that's going to be here for the remainder of the game. This knight is trapped. This knight has no way home. Which, oh god, I'm failing miserably at drawing these arrows. This knight can never return to the game, which means that white is going to have to commit pieces to the king side to guard this knight, but then all his pieces get stuck on the king side for no reason. Queen h5, I mean, it's sensible. He needs to get something going on the king side, but he just doesn't have anything. For instance, if black were to go queen f6, he's already threatening to just go king g7 and take a knight. So, yeah, I mean, white just has a terrible position. Instead, black played bishop c5, which is okay. I think this is really forcing white to play a move that he wanted to anyway. And the reason I say this is a move that white wanted to play anyway is, say white were to play the move knight d2, or sorry, queen h5, say queen f6, right, and then knight d2, developing this knight. The problem is this actually is losing material. After takes, check, I win the knight on d2. So this king on g1 is problematic for white. He's going to need to play king h1 in order to develop the queen knight, which he desperately needs to get into the game. So this bishop c5 move does slightly encourage white to make a move that he was probably going to make anyway. And again, I think black should just play queen f6, king g7, trying to track down this knight. Of course, white can put his rook on h3, but then he has like 3 pieces out of the game over here for no reason, which would not be what you want. So, yeah, I mean, white's basically busted here. Although black gives him a little bit of breathing room here by playing the not terribly strong move d3. The reason I say this move is not terribly strong is that this knight is having terrible trouble developing in all variations. Again, say I go queen f6, you can't go knight d2 because this comes with tempo. You're losing a pawn here. You probably have to play like knight c4 or something. So playing d3 and resolving the tension in the center is really helping white, because white needs to develop this knight and he just can't. He can't right now. It's got to be so frustrating for him. And if white ever takes here, well, then the tension has resolved in a way that benefits black. Black gets to make use of this knight. It wasn't really doing anything. So this would be very good. I mean, you could even consider taking with the queen, eyeballing this. That might be a little greedy, though. I would probably take with the knight and just put this knight on a beautiful central square. This has obviously benefited the black player. So white's never really interested in taking here. But as long as the pawn is here, it's restricting this b1 knight. So you've really let white off the hook by playing this d3 move. White immediately develops. Black plays a move I'm not thrilled about. He plays b5. The idea is to prevent knight c4 into e5, but I'm not sure that was a real threat. For instance, queen f6, knight c4, you're not threatening to go knight e5, because I have that covered twice. In fact, here I go king g7, I think I'm winning a piece. Not what you want. You don't want to lose your piece. So I'm not winning a piece because of this move. But your knight's still trapped. I play king g6 and I'm asking you, what are you doing? How are you improving your pieces? My pieces have scope to improve. This knight could come to d5. That'd be an improvement. This pawn majority can roll, but you can't really improve. So I don't think this knight c4 idea is a threat, but okay, b5. I'm not sure white is really doing much anyway, so why not? Rook a e1, developing his last piece, also introducing the threat of knight f5. So queen f6, stepping out of the threat. Rook f3. This is somewhat forced, otherwise king g7 is going to land. I suppose, if white plays some nothing move, I suppose this king g7 can be met by rook f3, and you might just have to go back. Okay, so I take back my previous claim, but the knight is still stuck, and that's still problematic. So white goes rook f3. Oh, whoa, sorry. Oh, right, the study got really messed up here. I'm sorry. For some reason, it misordered the moves. So rook f3. Knight e7 was played. Yeah, okay. Sorry, it just looks really weird on my screen. Rook f3, knight e7. Standard idea. The knight's coming to a better square. Makes a lot of sense to me. And, oh my god. Rook h3, yeah. And here queen g6, proposing the queens come off. If the queens come off, that's great for black. He has a passed d3 pawn, and your knight is still stuck. So queen h4. And here black played a move that really confused me. So black had just played knight e7, and I had assumed it was with the intention of going knight d5. That seems like just a good idea to me, to put the knight on a nice central square. But here, black played knight c6 back. And I was sort of looking at this going like, huh? What's the idea here? And I don't really see it. I think knight d5 is very strong. And maybe black was worried that he had hung his pawn. But when all your pieces take up really, really nice squares, and all of your opponent's pieces look like they've just been thrown on the board at random, that means it's time to look for some tactics. And here, black, I believe, is just winning with knight takes f4. Well, I say about that, but maybe there's rook g3 here. So perhaps slightly better is knight e3. Yes, this works, because you have to accept the knight, it's threatening mate. And you should probably accept it with this rook. If you take, actually, I don't think it matters. You can take it with either rook. Takes, rook takes, and you have some problems here. Yes, you can't even play rook g3 because you get mated. So this is just total disaster. This is winning for black. So knight d5 is working, in summary. Which means that it's just a better move than knight c6. It's a more centralized square for the knight. The other thing that's interesting is after knight c6, you have to see tactics here. And this is true after knight d5 as well. In both these lines, you have to be aware of the tactical opportunity for black here, because white has what appears to be a very problematic move, and that is the move rook g3. This looks like have we blown it? The queen has no available squares. So on both these moves, you have to see black's rejoinder to this tactic. So take a second if you'd like. What is black going to play here? The answer to this question is the spectacular move, bishop f2. This is a monster of a bishop, hitting everything. That's attacking everything it possibly could. So here, this is just great for black. It probably forces a a queen trade. Man, I'm struggling to speak English today. It's quite amusing. Or maybe not, who knows. And here you have 2 rooks hanging. Good luck with that one. So rook g3 is unplayable, but I wonder if the players calculated that, because it's not totally obvious after either of these moves what black is doing on rook g3. You have to see this move. It's the only response. Okay, knight c6, knight f3 played, looking to involve the knight. And here black surprised me again. I assumed the point of moving this knight was to play bishop e7 and kick the queen out. But black played f6. Again, nothing so horribly wrong with this, but it feels like we're not really making progress. Of course, the idea behind f6 is to take away these squares from the incoming knight. But if I go bishop e7 and you jump in, I think you should move your queen away. But if you jump in, well, then I'll take this, and you have a problem here because now I play f6, and this is starting to collapse. This knight is going to get caught in the crossfire here. For instance, after takes, all of a sudden you're just totally pinned down to this h6 knight for basically forever. The other point is, if you play rook takes, all of a sudden your back rank is very, very sad. Whoops. Problem. So this is just unplayable. Okay, so knight f3. I would have liked to see bishop e7. You get the queen out, and then this knight starts to look more and more like easy pickings. This rook is like, what are you doing here? But f6, okay, nothing so wrong with this. Knight d2. The knight can't go anywhere from f3. And, sorry, I should mention the other point behind this is, again, you can't take this because of d2. So knight d2 introduces the threat of rook takes e6. And unfortunately here, black blundered the game away in one move. He's been playing such a good game, such a logical game. He developed his pieces, he gave them good squares. Sure, he made some questionable decisions, but overall he really put white in a terrible position with this knight. But here, black just totally throws the game away with the move rook f e8. Which looks like a totally innocuous move. You attack my pawn, I defend my pawn. What's the problem? What could possibly be the problem here? A better move would be the move rook d6, guarding the pawn the other way. The problem with rook on f to e8 is twofold. First, you've taken the e8 square away. And unfortunately for you, that was a very important square for the queen. And second, but much more subtle, and actually very, very difficult to see, is that this rook is no longer protecting f7. Why could that possibly matter? Let's look. Rook f e8. Here white played rook g3. And in this position, black actually resigned. But I think this might have been a premature resignation because black has a very similar idea to before. Black has the move bishop f2. And the fact that black resigned in this position makes me think that maybe he didn't see bishop f2 in the previous line. But as I mentioned, this no longer works because of a tiny, tiny detail. I take the queen, you take the queen. You have both rooks hanging still, like the previous variation, but I said there was one tiny detail that's changed. The rook's not guarding f7. Which means I have the spectacular knight f7 checkmate. So this very innocuous rook move, just sliding over, guarding the pawn. Turns out it has a subtle, fatal flaw. A very, very interesting tactical idea here. A sort of a sad ending for the black player who had really had a strong advantage throughout the game. Really out of the opening. It was definitely an entertaining game. I sort of wish it hadn't ended this way. But that's chess. Sometimes you blow it. I would know, as they say. A strong showing from both players. I would advise White to choose a different opening line. It was very unambitious. He developed his queen early, not what we want to be doing. And then Black sort of wandered into this pin. It got a little bit muddy, but White ended up just trapping his own knight on the side of the board. Not something we want to be doing. And because of that, Black really could never be worse until he just blundered tactically. Which is unfortunate, but it happens. White took advantage of it. So a good game to both players. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully I'll be getting out the last two games quickly, because it's been a while, so I'm going to try and get out the last two games ASAP. Have a lovely weekend, everyone, and I will be back.